how I made over, meaning you, how I made over 100K of net proceeds from my first split. They want to know.
So let's get to the numbers.
Yeah.
So I purchased the house for, like I said, for $115. Closing cost was about 11K or so. So total it was about like $125K.
Yeah.
I sold the house at $230,000.
Yeah.
A year and a half later.
Okay.
It had closing costs of about $17K or so. After closing costs it's about $212K.
Okay.
Right? So I'm at 212, right? 212K or so. And then remember I had a mortgage on it, right? So at this point my mortgage is probably about like 84K
So
remaining.
let me pull out the calculator. Okay.
Less 84K, right? Because I still have a mortgage on it and they take it from the proceeds when you sell it. And then my net proceeds from the sale was $127,000. 848.
848.
127,848 was my net proceeds. That's essentially the amount that's wired into my account. 127. Boom.
That goes to you.
Yeah.
After you sell the house.
Music. So much evil in this world, I sit back like, why bother? But get a different view every time that I call Dada. It's like Numi got the Uzi, man, she always spitting facts. She be dropping bombs, make all of them double back. And then the crime raises. It's something that they never gonna get that. But it's cool, let's sit back and chit-chat, unveil mindset.
You gotta be stoic. You can't be frail. If you get on the track, you can't derail. If you stick around long enough,
You will surely be unveiled.
What's popping? What's did it? Welcome back to another Unveiled Mindset. We're back like we never left. We're about to have another amazing show.
Yep.
With the lovely wife, Numso Kaba. And don't forget the other host, Dauda Kande, the husband, and that's the wifey, Numso Kaba. Usually it's the other way around, but today it's a special day for her.
Oh, okay.
Usually it's Dauda Kande and then wifey, but today it's gonna be wifey and then
It's all
Dauda,
about me
you know?
today.
Yeah, today we got some
interesting stuff to go through today.
Yeah.
All right, welcome guys. Welcome to the Unveiled Mindset podcast, where we have enlightening and purpose-filled conversation that help unveil the mind and helps to nurture growth.
Yep.
If for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, make sure you subscribe down below. Click the notification bell so that you're alerted every single time we drop an episode. You can find us at all your major podcast apps, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc.
Everything.
So make sure y'all tune in there. This is about to be a dope episode. You want to make sure you watch it all.
Talk about Unveiled Mindset. This is a true Unveiled Mindset.
Yeah. Make sure you subscribe to our Instagram too.
Oh, yeah.
Unveiled _mindset. Make sure you do all of that other stuff. It's going to be down below in the description below.
Everything going to be in the description. As soon as you go on the page, go to the description, everything's going to be there for you. My page, your page, the Unveiled Mindset page is there too. Everything is there. So let's just cut to the chase. Let's just get into how was your weekend so far?
Weekend is good. Is good.
Okay, enough of that. Let's get to the business. Let's cut to the business, because we're here for business.
Weekend is. Let me talk about my weekend. Okay. It's one of those things where it's like weekends are short. You're trying to get through household things. You're trying to get through everything, but at the same time, still handling business during the weekend. Okay, so let's not forget about that.
Okay. Business. All right. Weekend. Okay, that's fine. Nobody want to hear about your boring weekend.
Everybody wants to hear about the laundry and stuff.
People don't want to hear all of that. People just want to know.
Okay, what do people want to know?
The business.
All right, so let's get into
the business. All of that, chit chat and ain't gonna get nowhere, man.
Let's get into the business then.
Okay, so today's topic is going to be different. We're going to get into the Numso's amazing, how should I put this?
Journey thus far.
Yeah. Interesting journey.
Specifically real estate.
Yes.
We're talking about the topic of real estate, which is my favorite topic.
She loves real estate, yo. So
I do.
That's her thing. We've been talking about real estate. Well, her and I have been talking about real estate for I would say about 2 years now.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when you first got the second property, where the two crackers were at.
It was not.
And I was like,
for those of you who did not watch the first episode, you won't know. You won't know what we're talking about. Go watch that first episode.
So let me set it up for you.
It was not. No, let's just drop a clip right here.
Yeah, we're gonna drop a clip right here. We went to that property. It was crazy. Oh my God. So boom, she parked And then I get out the car. I swear to God, I lied to you now. As soon as I hop out the car, it was two crackheads, bro.
It was not two.
Yes, it was. It was a girl and it was a guy. Like, yes.
Hey, down there.
Yes. Well, like, bro. So the crackhead walked past me.
First of all,
bro, the guy walked right past me, and the other crackhead was a lady. She was picking up cans, bro. I swear she picked up a can right by my foot. She picked it up and put it right in the basket and just kept walking. I said, "Oh no!"
But
you know what I'm gonna just do? She had a property that did amazing. It was a crazy experience, but she was able to turn everything around and just did something amazing with it. But the property did come with two crackheads. I'll tell you that. It didn't come with two crackheads, but I just saw two crackheads in front of the property. So I just
it came with two crackheads.
So therefore, we had to make some movement. So we maneuver. So okay, let's just get to it. All joke aside, so we're gonna get into your little adventure, your little journey. That I feel like we need to touch on and trying to get into like the details and the ins and out of everything, right? And because I was there when you first got this property, and then you had other plans of getting more property, better property to make more money for the future or whatever. Now that we're both doing that together, so we're gonna kind of get into it. Let's get to the chase. So, not too long ago, you posted some you posted something on Instagram about real estate, right? And you were kind of talking about the other house that you currently like sold, right? And I think people have some questions for you online, and so we decided today to kind of get on the Unveiled Mindset and kind of break it down to you guys how she went about getting her first property, how much it took her, everything, and how she sold a house and how all that thing everything happened. So
my second property.
Yeah, your second property. Today. Yeah. So so as far as your first property, the second property, what was your like initial thought going into buying this property?
I found this property, the second property in January, right? And this is I knew that I wanted to like actually purchase another property for sure. Yeah. I wasn't sure like when I was going to find the property, who, where it was going to be, etc. I knew like in terms of like where I knew I wanted it to be in Connecticut. Yeah. And when I say January, like this is 2022, right? Okay. So December 2021, I made my vision board. Y'all, for those of you who know me, I do vision boards every year. I write down my goals. I try to think about like, okay, what are the main things that I want to achieve this year coming up, right?
I made one this year.
So
too.
Yeah, we made one this year together. So I knew literally on my vision board, I had by the end of December 2022, I was going to have a property that was going to be around 120. Right. And
what do you mean when you said 120? What do you mean 100?
120K.
Okay.
And it was going to be a duplex. Yeah. Right. So I had that on my vision board, and I mentioned to myself, like, because at the time I was also listening to different podcasts and watching different movies and things like that. I would say also like reading a lot of different books with regards to real estate. And I had some like experience before because this was my second property, which we'll get into that another time, but essentially I knew that I wanted to get that like a property that year. So it was easy for me to then like find a realtor, work with that realtor, tell them exactly like, hey, I'm looking for something that's between this price and this price, and I'm okay if it's distressed. I don't want anything to be a major project, like a major like rehab that needs to get done to it. And with that, I was able to like specify a lot my search criteria. Okay. So then that helped me because whenever he would send anything through, it would be like very specific to what I'm looking for. Yeah. So I wasn't like just looking at everything that was coming, to me, because that could be overwhelming. Yeah. So with that, it was almost kind of like finding a needle in a haystack, right? Yeah. But I'm telling him like,
hard to find.
I only need you to send me needles. Yeah. I don't need to see like that sounds wild. That sounds
don't
wild.
Send me needles.
But I don't need to see like everything that's out there. Yeah. And because of that, as soon as I saw this property, I was like, I want to go take a walkthrough of this. And as soon as I was there in person, I was like, okay, this is it. I'm excited.
So we're gonna do this. So I was gonna first ask you like with the like your what made you wanted to get into real estate? Mm-hmm. What was that thing? Because obviously you know about real estate, right? Mm-hmm. But what was that one thing that?
At what point?
Yeah, like what was that turning point? Like, yo, this is what I want to do. Like, what was that?
Yeah, so it's interesting because like, so in terms of my background, mm-hmm. For those of you who don't know, I am a CPA. And I first started out like, so I was a double major, accounting and finance in undergrad, and then master of science in accounting in grad school, right? I was also a criminal justice minor, which is a separate story on its own, but
trying to rush people.
And so I first started my career essentially as an auditor. Mm-hmm. And the industry that I happened to focus, it's interesting because I did a 1-year rotation, mm-hmm. which is what brought me to New York. Mm-hmm. After that, it was at one of the major big 4 public accounting firms like in the world. Mm. And after that,
in the world,
it is. They're called the Big 4 global. Yeah. And so after the rotation, I wanted to I needed to kind of like come out of that and go back into regular audit.
Yeah.
And they were asking me, what industry do you want? Are you interested in? I was like, you know what? I'm open to all industries, but it would be interesting if I get into media and entertainment or retail consumer goods.
Okay.
Because to me, those sounded like really cool, right? Like, oh, and granted, I'm not doing those, like, I'm not doing the operational aspect of those things, right? Mm-hmm. I'm just the auditor, but I'm still like, okay, it would be interesting to like audit those types of companies. Yeah. But I was like, you know, I'm open. I happened to get transferred into the real estate group. Mm-hmm. And when I got transferred into the real estate group, I was put on a client, which I was on that client for like the duration, the whole time I was in audit. Mm-hmm. And it was a first time audit. And it was a REIT. So for those of you who don't know what a REIT is, it was a real estate investment trust. Mm-hmm. And they essentially like buy properties, right? It depending on the REIT will depend on the type of property that they buy, but they were like significantly growing. They were buying commercial properties, like 300 properties, 100 properties a year. Like they were significantly growing. They ended up going public as well. So like I had a lot of experience on that client. Now, mind you, while I was on that client, I was able to learn so much from an accounting standpoint, like, and what I mean by an accounting standpoint, like, so it was a completely different lens, right? So I'm auditing this REIT, right? And in the beginning, I focused on like revenue, kind of like the P&L, right? So revenue, expenses. So like I was able to kind of really understand the types of revenues and the types of expenses that like REITs are incurring. So meaning revenue, which are mainly coming from what? Leases, right? Yeah. So I was able to like go through and like learn how to like read through leases, identify like some of the major terms, you know, calculate what a rental revenue, and be able to, even from an accounts receivable standpoint, like really be able to understand books and records of a company that invests in real estate. Yeah. Even the expenses, right? Like line items that I wouldn't see if I was in another industry. So like property expenses, like real estate taxes, utilities, you know, things like that. Yeah. So also just constructions. And so I spent some time, like a couple years, on the revenue P&L aspect and expense aspect of things, and then I transitioned over to more so like understanding like the valuation aspect of these underlying entities, companies, exactly, these acquisitions. We had 2 senior managers on job. One focused mainly on like the revenue, you know, AR expenses, etc. The other focused on like the acquisition, disposition, impairment, and stuff. Yeah. And so then I transitioned over and started working with the other senior manager a little bit more, picking up and understanding like when you're buying and acquiring a property, you know, thinking about like valuation, right? Like, and that's why even now it's easier for me to read appraisals because I understand like, okay, taking a look at the market comp, right? Sales comp, when you're looking to see like the value of this company, right? Comparison, or like looking at the rent to see if it's comparable, you know, market cap calculations. So some of these different calculations that go into like valuing a property. So that was like very, very interesting for me. And then somewhere along the lines, you know, like the industry became extremely interesting to me. I transitioned out of that group, and honestly, like shout out to those 2 senior managers and just the whole team overall. Like it was without that group And without that experience, and honestly, without those 2 senior managers, I don't know if I would have even like thought about real estate, to be honest. Yeah. Like, I learned so much from them. Yeah. So much from them. Like, and they were like, they would sit and like teach. They were amazing, like, senior managers in the way in which like they were literally nurturing growth. Yeah. Like, they taught me all of what I knew at the time, and then as I grew, you know, as a professional in that group, I then like started, you know, supervising. I had seniors and staffs under me that I was then teaching some of these things. Yeah. So it was the knowledge was amazing. Then I transitioned to a position where it was more transaction based. It was still real estate and like some other industries, but it was like, let's say a company was buying another company, right? So I would come in and do like financial diligence. And then I did some like hotel hospitality closing. So like if you're buying, like how we close on our house, right? Now, and then we need to do our closing statements and our operations. Yeah. But imagine for a hotel, and I was doing that, and I was like traveling like every other month, every month, multiple times a month to like all these different cities. And then with the hotel, because remember I told you I used to work at a hotel, and then we kind of got into a conversation like you actually end up going to some of these hotels, right? Yep. You went inside, you saw how they operate, like the back office, everything back of the house. So so that was super fascinating. Eventually throughout that whole process, before I actually made that transition to that other group, when I was still, I think in audit, I think probably around the pandemic. Around the pandemic, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people went through like this thought process during the pandemic of like, let me reassess, right? And so I don't know. I just reassessed, and I was like, honestly, I love this industry, and I want to do it. Like, I want to go and just do it myself. Yeah. Like, you always get stuck in like analysis paralysis is what people say. Yeah. Like, you're always doing the research. You're like, oh my goodness, I want to do this. But you never actually do it. Yeah. So then I was like, you know what? 2021, I went back to Connecticut due to the pandemic. I purchased first house there. That was easy though, because that was my parents' triplex. I purchased from them. That was like a little baby kiddie pool, right? Getting into it. Not really. Not really. You don't think so? No. Not really. It's not a baby kid. To me, it wasn't that scary because it was for my parents. No, yeah, okay. And from that aspect, yes. I thought you meant just actually getting it done. Yeah. You just talk about people just words. Never, action, right? Like you never go and execute. That first step right there is the reason why we're here today. Yeah, because and that was like I think June or that was late. Yeah. Towards the second half of 2021, and then once I jumped the gun on that, I was like, oh, I'm in this. You was talking about it consistently whenever you used to be on the phone. I was consistently talking about it. I was like, I did it. I jumped the gun. I'm in this. Because my whole thing, not to cut you off, whole thing, every time we get on the phone, you be frustrated. Like, oh my God, I just need to like save this money and just get another property. I was like, in my head, I was like, why are you worried about another property? You live in one. Right? Like why are you trying to get another house? You live in one already. Meaning, like, that's when somebody doesn't understand, like, or see the vision. Yep. It's just only you can understand at the time. So that's, where the frustration comes from. But go ahead. Yeah, no, that's funny, but that's exactly what it was. Like, I was like, okay, I'm gonna save. I literally like moved back over there. I readjusted my budget. I'm like, how much do I need to save a month in order for me to be in a position where I have X amount for a down payment or deposit, right? Correct. So I ended up then like I said, did my vision board December 2021. I was like, this year I'm going to buy another one. And January, I saw that property and I was like, you know what? Let's go for it. I'm getting it. So, Madame, she said a lot of stuff. She used a lot of big words. Acquisition. Analysis paralysis. Analysis paralysis. You really get stuck. No, for sure. But, Madame, I would like to tell people, right? She used a lot of stuff that's kind of like accounting based and finance based. If you don't know account receivable or account payable, if people don't know, because I'm just saying not everybody's going to be familiar with some of the terms that you're saying. Okay. So I'm here to break it down for them. I get what you're saying. In a way, you feel me? So just know she based on her job,
the environment she was in, it was a great environment. She ran into a great opportunity. She ran into
great people,
good people,
great mentors
people that, you know, kind of molded her brain and changed direction when she went to that real estate, you know, aspect, and then ended up buying as her, you know, the parents are us, and then boom, boom.
Yeah.
So that's
and then I wanted to do it for myself.
Yeah, for herself.
It was no longer like I want to do it just as a profession. So
it triggered her.
I want to actually own.
So they were like the motivator for.
Yeah.
So basically, that's what it is. I know she mentioned P&L, a whole bunch of this. So that's all she just trying to say. This happened, this inspired me, and I took this route. Okay, now let's get into the nitty gritty, right? And we have a question here from Ibrahim, right? You know, I just wanted to shout him out a little bit, right? Because he said his question was, how do you go about looking for deals and the analysis involved?
I would say, so my number, a couple different ways. So the realtor, right? I have some go-to realtors that I work with if it's in the markets that I've been in. So like at this point, you know, I have a go-to realtor if I want to buy something in Connecticut, go-to realtor if we want to buy something in New York, or go-to realtor if we want to buy something elsewhere, right? Yeah. In another market that we're looking in right now in the Midwest. We'll just keep it to the Midwest.
We there.
But so yeah, I would say realtor. I would say also what we're actually getting into now, and I haven't used this route before, but like wholesalers,
which is actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right. If you know, you know, like, you know.
Yeah. So I would say wholesalers. If you guys want to know more about that, let us know down in the comments down below. Let us know on our page, and we will do another video on that and go more into details. But and then also just like other investors, I would say. I haven't personally, I mean, outside of like wholesalers, I haven't like personally purchased a deal from like someone that I know. Yeah. But that's kind of like a way, because I know, like, for example, when I was selling my property, there are people that I knew that like had reached out, like, oh, hey, you know, they may have been interested.
Yeah. So no, that was cool. So that
and analysis, I guess. Yeah. So it kind of, the analysis kind of goes back to like, if you haven't done it before, you like, it's something that you would have to kind of like learn how to do to run your numbers. So like, you know, in Excel, I take a look to see, like, I analyze like the rent potential of it, right? Like, so number one, if you have a realtor, your realtor can easily pull your sales comps, your rent comps, and they can pull like different information that you may need in order to make your decision. So I like to kind of think through like the high end and the low end, and then see like where, for similar comparables of my property, and then see where it fits. Number one, I don't want my house to be like the most expensive house on the block, right? Yeah. Because at that point, like, there's this aspect of like equity when it comes to like real estate. For those of you who don't know what that is, right, drop some comments down below, and or, you know, reach out to the Instagram page if you want a separate video about that. We'll go into that. But
wholesaler and equity too.
Yeah. So there's an aspect of like equity, and so I don't want my house, like, I want to make sure that there's enough room if I want to sell it, or if I want to, you know, add some value to it, I still have room to be able to like sell it at a okay.
So let me pinpoint something real quick, right? And also give an analogy. So you say you don't want your house to be the
most expensive house on the block, yeah.
Okay, so that's also kind of saying like you don't want to be the smartest person in a room, because then there's room to grow.
Yeah, you could say it that way.
So kind of like that. So obviously, if you okay, just
the only difference is if you're smart, if you're the smartest person in the room, you can still like succeed. If your house is the most expensive house on the block, it's going to be hard for you to sell that house even at the price that you bought it at, because like it's like if your house is like $200K and every other house on the block is $100K, like,
yeah, I mean that's just if you want to brag like I got the most expensive house on the block, then that's that. But in terms of like, you want to,
and I'm talking about like in a way where it's like in a neighborhood that's not like an A or B neighborhood. Like, I'm talking about like in a place where like you've put so much money into this house, and now your after repair value is just like significantly above market. You're gonna have to either hold on to it, which is fine, and then just cash flow, right? That's another thing. Like, if your strategy is cash flowing, you know, that's
would
fine.
You say they should go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, so the analysis, essentially going in Excel and looking at that, getting all the data that I need and running the numbers, taking a look to see what is the market rent, how much am I putting down, am I taking a loan, what's my interest going to be, what are my monthly estimated expenses going to be, right? Property taxes, you can look at the county records for that, or ask your realtor, homeowners insurance, like reserves, etc. So you want to see like, what are my projected monthly income monthly expenses going to be? What is the projected like rent going to be? You know, you can do a low end, a high end, and then essentially see, what is your cap rate? Like, what is your percentage return? And then also like, how long will it take you to kind of like get your money back?
And does it make sense too?
And if it makes sense for you, and then even the rent, right? Like, who are you renting to, right? Are you going to be renting like, is it in a place where the rents around are like 700, or is it in a place where the rent around is like 2,000, right?
You got to do your research on the area first to see what the average like rent is in the area, and then you go ahead and do that or whatever.
And what kind of rent? Is it Airbnb? Is it medium-term rental? Is it long-term rental?
You got to see if there's traffic. But eventually, you got to be able to connect it with people that also going to be able to help you to get to that, next level or whatever. Yeah. So knowing people.
Let us know if you have more questions on the calculation. I'll let you guys know.
Okay, so we have another one on type of financing that you have used in the past or moving forward. That's an important one.
Yeah. So in terms of financing that I have used, so I mean, number one, like, my own finances, right? Like I said before, when it comes to like, okay, how much do I need to put down, like in a as a percentage, how much, like, making sure like you're saving enough in order to put down. So number two, mortgage. So I would say conventional. That's typically what I've used is a conventional mortgage. For me, like both of my last properties, I've had to put down 25% because so the second one, it was an investment property. So it was investment property and I wasn't living there, and it was residential. So I had to put down 25%.
So okay. So
and I wasn't living there. So
okay, even with conventional, right? So you're saying the percentage that you had to put down was higher because it was an investment?
Yeah, it was an investment. I bought it as an investment property, not as like a residential, not as if I lived there.
So therefore, that's the difference between conventional and FHA. Right?
Yeah. You could still do conventional residential as well.
For sure. But obviously nobody want to do that because it'll be, you're going to have to put down even more money.
And
the interest probably will be higher. I should say.
I would say like the first property was a conventional and residential for me, and my interest wasn't like really that much. I think I put down either 20 or 25%, but I think it's because it was a triplex.
So got you. Now that makes sense, because that's what I was trying to get to. Because obviously you do want to like, because we always talk about how having money, right?
Cash,
because this is not just let people like it's not like if you don't have no money, you can't just go out there and just do anything, right? So obviously that's another thing. But continue.
And the thing is like, but here's the thing, like when you put down less than a certain percentage, I don't remember what it is. You guys should look it up. Either I don't know if it's 20% or whatever. You have to then pay PMI, which is like just mortgage insurance, I think it is, like on top of whatever you're paying. So if I mean, that's not to say that like definitely if you have the reserves, if you have if you don't have any like super high credit card or consumer debt that has a much higher percentage, which like in that case it makes more sense for you to clear that before you get into any investments. But if you're in a position where you are able and you feel like that you're able, like I would say that like there are a ton of people that invest and they only need to put 3% down, 5% down, or there are even some programs where like there's some programs that you probably don't even need to put that much down, like depending on your income and stuff like that. That's so true. Definitely like do research to find out like especially if it's something that people want to do, there's ways for them to be able to do it without them having to like save all this amount, right? But it just depends on everyone's situation. Other financing, I would say, so predominantly like I would say convention, regular mortgages, and then also a HELOC as well. I do have a HELOC, but the HELOC is primarily like if I need to draw on it to make any like renovations and stuff like that, I'll tap into my HELOC and then ultimately like pay it back. And
also that's another topic for that's another time for another day, or the HELOC is, because she's throwing a lot of stuff at y'all, and then eventually we're gonna go down, eventually and break all those down.
And for those of you who don't know, you can also borrow against your 401k. So I actually did that my first purchase. I borrowed against my own 401k. And when you borrow against your 401k, depending on, this is not, so let me just break here. This is not financial advice, and we need to put that disclaimer down below. This is not financial advice. This is just based on my experience. So I'm just giving you guys examples of what I've done, but and what I've heard. So when I borrowed against my 401k, I was able to borrow a certain amount I didn't have to pay any penalties. Nothing. I didn't have to pay any taxes on it because I technically didn't take it out of my 401k.
So you didn't pay.
I just borrowed against it.
You didn't pay nothing on it.
I didn't pay any penalties or fees.
Okay.
What I did have to do is on a monthly basis, when I would contribute to my 401k, there was almost like an interest kind of, but I think they do that to make sure that I don't know.
When you say interest, what do you mean like
a little bit? I don't know. I don't remember what the percentage was, but because I took I needed, I don't know how they calculate it.
Okay, but you saying, but eventually
it was a little bit of something because I was contributing.
Was being deducted.
I was contributing to my 401k anyways, right, on a monthly basis. So there was a certain percentage which wasn't even high.
No, for sure.
For that needed to be added on there, but it was all still going to be my money. It was interest to myself.
Yeah.
Almost.
Okay.
And then I've since paid that back. Obviously.
So like she said, that's not financial advice.
Yeah, none of this is financial advice. Yeah, it's just my experience.
Your experience. Okay, let's get to the nitty gritty of it, right? This is I'm surprised. Maybe this question also got a lot of clicks and interest, right? Okay. So this question is waiting and wanting to hear from you, talk about it. So how much did you? How I made over, meaning you, how I made over 100K of net proceeds from my first flip, from your first flip, meaning.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. So I can break that. So so let's get into the numbers because I always tell you that I love watching bigger podcasts.
One day.
Bigger pockets.
Bigger pockets.
Podcasts.
One day we'll definitely be on there.
No, for sure. Because people go on there, they talk about their story, but then they get straight to the numbers, and it helps to kind of conceptualize the process and understand really picture what it is, right, and what happened exactly.
Behind the scenes.
Okay, so from my first, and I call it an unintentional flip. Because the reason I call it that is because I initially purchased it and it was going to be a buy and hold situation. But then at some point, and we could talk about this another time, but at some point I decided that I wanted to sell it. Yeah. I had done a ton of renovations to it. So I had done a lot of fixing and things like that to add value. But all right, so I ended up, April 2022. So from January, I found the property. It was a long closing because the seller was just taking forever on some things. We probably got in contract, I don't know, February or something. No. But nevertheless, we closed in April. The purchase price that I closed at was about $115K.
Okay.
So 150K was
115. 115.
Okay. Yeah. And mind you, I told you on my vision board, I told myself okay, I need to buy something that's a duplex that's 120.
Yeah.
And even that is pretty low, but I was able to find that. And the house was it was I wouldn't say it was completely distressed because it was habitable, right? The landlord he lived downstairs and he had tenants that were upstairs.
Wait, the landlord lived in that basement?
On the first floor.
Oh, the first floor. I was going to say, okay. I was going to say, oh my God.
He lived on the first floor, and then the tenants live upstairs, right? And he told me like, oh, they're paying. It's great, blah, blah, blah. They weren't paying. And he had inherited the property. So because he had inherited the property, when we were closing, what also took some time is that a lot of things had to be deducted from his net proceeds because he had a whole bunch of issues and stuff. Yeah, like water bills and just different things. He had a lot of liens. He had a lot of liens against the property, so he was in financial distress.
He didn't take care of the property at all while he was.
He didn't take care of the property that well. It was in financial. He was probably in financial distress a little bit. So he had to clear up some of those liens, or some of them had to be like taken out of like whatever was going to go to him. And then on top of that, because he had inherited it, like he was able to just like, he didn't buy the property, so anything was just going to be cash that he's getting for the first time. And then upstairs, like they weren't paying him, which I found out after, right? Because they didn't tell me. Like I had asked this, but you know.
So let's do this right here, right? Just we're gonna go back to the question, right? That was asked, the 100K, over 100K, how you made that from your first flip, and then we're gonna kind of go back into all of the details and all the mishaps and things that you dealt with this house. So let's just touch on 100K because that's what everybody want to know.
So let's get to the numbers.
Yeah.
So I purchased the house for, like I said, for $115. Closing cost was about $11K or so. Yeah. And so total it was about like $125K.
Yeah.
I ended up doing a mortgage, so I put down 25%. And so my 25% down of the purchase price was about $28K, $29K. And then I funded also the closing cost as well. So I ended up like about $11K.
11K, okay.
Yeah. So I ended up putting, $115, $11K, like let's say, $10K or so closing costs. So $125. Out of the $125, I put down about like, $39K. Okay. Right. And then had a mortgage of about like 86K. Then a year later, I ended up selling the property. A year and a half later, right? A little bit over a year and a half later, I ended up selling the property. So the sell price was $230,000. Yeah. So $230,000. $230,000. I had about $16K. 17K or so closing costs that came out of that. So you say
the 230 was the number that you was trying to sell the house for?
Yes. Okay. And that's what, so I actually got in contract at higher, but then we had to do some things, and then they brought, with the lender and stuff, they only appraised it up to 230. Okay. So essentially I sold the house at 230,000 a year and a half later. Okay. And then I had closing costs of about 17K or so. Okay. So the amount after
now you
selling it.
Okay.
So then after closing costs is about 212K. Okay. Right. And then
quick question.
Yes.
So when it comes to closing costs as a buyer, is it less than when you're selling? Does the seller pay more in closing?
For me it depended. Like I had to give like a credit for something. Okay. I had to give like a 2K credit because I didn't feel like fixing one of their things.
Got you.
Yeah, so they ended up fixing it. So I'm at 212, right? 212K or so. And then remember I had a mortgage on it, right? So at this point my mortgage is probably about like 84K remaining.
Let me pull out the calculator right now.
Yeah, right? Pull out the calculator.
Okay, so we have 230, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Less like 17K or so. You want exact numbers? Or 17K? Oh, you got
the numbers.
I got exact numbers.
Okay, let's do the exact number.
Yeah, so it's 230 minus 17, so it's at 17.8K. Okay. So 17K or so. So we're at 212.
Okay, 212.
Right?
Okay.
Less 84K, right? Because I still have a mortgage on it, and they take it from the proceeds when you sell it. And then my net proceeds from the sale was $127,000. 848.
848.
127,848 was my net proceeds.
Wait, yeah, you need to regurgitate what you just said.
127,000.
The net.
Yes. Okay. That was my net proceeds.
Okay, got you.
So that was my net proceeds from the sale, right? And what that means is net proceeds. That's essentially the amount that's wired into my account. 127. Boom.
That goes to you.
Yeah.
After you sell the house. So okay. Now, you bought the house for 115. And then closing costs, you as a buyer now was 11K. So the total was 125 or 25, 26. So that's what you and the bank had to pay to buy to get the house. And then a year and a half later, you go ahead and decided to put the house on the market to be sold, and the house was appraised to 230. But when you first got it, it was at 115.
When I first got it, it was like at 119, 120. Yeah.
So a literally year and a half later, that 119 was appraised to 230, right? So damn near double, right? And so now you're the seller. You go ahead and put the house on the market, then you sell it, and then what the bank also put in, what you put down, they took that out.
Yeah.
And
so then
the closing costs.
No. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So those two get deducted from the 230.
Yep.
So whatever that's left all belongs to you now.
Yes. Partially. So at this point, right? So that's 127 to me.
Okay.
Now, if I want to say like, okay, let me remove to see like exactly like, okay, what is my true return from there? Then you got to start deducting things, right? To get like your true calculation return and stuff. And so for example, all right, I put down 38K, right? Because I put down the 25% of the purchase price plus like 11K of closing costs. So then you take that out and you get close to what?
For the
88K. Yeah. So you're at 88K. So then the 88K technically, but like the 38K or so, like that's still sitting in the account, right? Like it's not like I'm giving it to anyone. Yeah. It's just kind of like, okay, I got paid my money back.
Yeah.
Right. But the net proceeds that came to me was 127K. Of that, essentially, like I had initially put down, like I got back all of what I put down, and then also got back like 88K. Like almost 90K.
So, okay.
And then there were a few things like now you get into like, and this kind of transitions into more so of a tax kind of situation where, you know, you can kind of like figure out, all right, what are some things that like need to be deducted from this amount?
Yeah.
And so to number one, because I'm not paying taxes on that full amount, right? Yeah. Because there were other things like CapEx things and stuff that I incurred.
Okay.
That I was able to deduct, that I should be able to deduct from that. For example, I had renovation costs. I had to redo the roof, right? I had to redo the stairs. I had to do some demolishing in the back. I had to redo the furnace. So I literally like added that 230K. Like I added value to that property from like 115. And so I was able to kind of like, then I needed to then take that out. And I guess rough estimate of all of those costs, if you think about it. So, like the roof was about like 10K or so. The, some additional cap, like garage, for example, was like 6K or so. Furnaces was like about 8K or so. Yeah. So if you take into consideration like some of these things, let me see, that's about like 100, that's about 27K. Okay. So if you take like, okay, the 127 that came back, right? And then you take out about like 30K or so, it's still around like 90K, 100K proceeds. And these are some things that like, and mind you, I also had, the thing is too, so the property was occupational. So some of the, I was gonna touch on that. Some of the CapEx and renovations that I was doing, I was able to just use the rent amount that the tenants were paying.
And you had two at the time, right?
I had two at the end.
Okay, at the end.
No, I had one at the end.
Okay. Just that one guy.
Yeah, I had the one guy at the end.
Initially, it was two.
It was two.
Okay.
So originally, should we get into the tenant, like what it was now?
Just kind of touch on the numbers right now, and then we'll get into that.
Okay, so like in the beginning, the top tenants weren't paying rent. We evicted them. Yeah. Then a person came downstairs, and then there was two. At the end, the buyer who bought it from me, she wanted to move in downstairs. So the tenant downstairs left. She wanted to move in downstairs.
So the person that bought actually lives there.
Yeah, she lives there.
That's crazy.
Why?
Like, well,
she's from the area.
Okay.
So she's used to the area. She's from the area, but now she wants to like house hack. So she wants to like.
I get what it is. I get what it is.
Then she's gonna take that money and pay some of her mortgage.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
those are the numbers.
So now the thing is good because it's like it's two different people. Well, we're one of the same, but like the way you're throwing the numbers around, it can people are like, wait, what, 27 days. So like then those numbers can be scary when you 8K, 9K. Somebody's like, okay, I buy a house and I don't know, I gotta pay 8K. I gotta do this. You get what I'm saying? So it's like when you throw numbers around like that, it can scare people, right? So I'm glad you mentioned a tenant after she bought the house, she had two tenants that were paying her monthly. Yeah. So that's what like money management comes in. So like when you have a house, and that means you got to be responsible for whatever happened to the house. So the whatever monthly rent you're getting from the tenants, you got to make sure you put that somewhere safe in case if something happened. Absolutely. You don't have to come out of your pocket, and you can use that money to fix something. Absolutely. And sometimes nothing might happen. You might be saving that money for 2 years,
then you save a reserve.
Yeah, right. And also you did some work on a property which actually appraised the house or brought the value of the house to a higher, price, so those numbers is those are just the math, like whatever, like just breaking down what she put in and what she had to, pay the bank and all of that, out of, after she got paid. So that's all that is. So it's nothing like crazy, because we also want like you said, we're not giving nobody financial, advice, but we're just saying like through experience, you just, you was able to accomplish some within a year and a half. Yeah. Right.
I was able to use my 40 or 39K or so and get back, close to, well, number one, over over 100K, right? But outside of like what I put in, and outside of some of these other costs, get back still close to like 80K or so.
Okay, 80. All right, so yeah, that's a year.
And my money on top of that, right? So that's 80K that I didn't have before, and that's why like. And
you got all your money back.
Got all my money back, and then the 80K that I have. So so essentially everything that so basically 80K of new money.
No money,
and I don't even want to say 80. I think it's like 80 between the ranges. I would have to look at like all of my expenses, right? But essentially, I would say between like 80, 90K or so. The one thing that I would say though is now all of that, and to your point, what you were saying, I never took any rent amount and was like, okay, yeah, this is my money for me to live off of, right? Yeah. I always kept rent and keep rent in like the business account because that rent, and because even the mortgage, right? I'm not paying the mortgage, right? The house is paying the mortgage. Granted, if there are times where like I had to deal with eviction and things like that, that's another thing that you have to think about when you're running your numbers, is seeing like, okay, if you had just one tenant, right, and you had some other like vacancies, would you still be able to pay like your monthly expenses and your monthly bills? So I didn't take
emergency funds,
and you have to the property, and that's how I look at it. Like the same way, like as a human, like you should have like an emergency fund, is the same way that I look at like each of your properties, you should have an emergency fund. And the other thing too is a lot of times I don't know, and I'm not a mortgage person or expert, but a lot of times when I've gone for a regular commercial or residential conventional like investment property mortgage, they do look for reserves. So they want to see that like you have a reserve for the property as well.
Got you.
So
that's very important.
And all of the proceeds that were came from that is going right back into another property, right?
Investment
went back into another property.
As we go on with the Unveiled Mindset podcast, we're gonna get into like our new investments and things like that. So like none of that is sitting here with me. So it's like
it's all it's in other buildings.
So it's like, our mindset is, the whole point of this Unveiled Mindset is to be able to build generational wealth, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like you can't live rich when you're not rich yet, right? You can't, and in order to stay rich, you can't just go out there and just spend your money on anything, right? So you just got to be smart. So real estate also, a big part of like real estate and buying homes and properties and trying to be part of this whole industry is to be able to know and learn how to manage your finance, because that's probably number one before anything, right? So okay, now let's move on. We have another question for you, which this is I love this one. How did you manage your tenants? How did you manage your tenants?
How did I manage my tenants?
Because I was there for a couple.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah,
I would say, okay, so like I said, when I first joined, or when I first purchased a property, let me talk about, my first property, that one has been super easy. Shout out to my mom. She's like she's my property manager. And she manages like the tenants there and does what she needs to do.
She's the best property manager,
etc.
I'm not gonna lie.
She is the best property manager. Like even the Hartford one, like we would go to Hartford, all the time, like when we needed to go, like when we were dealing with some winter stuff. She was going when even in the summertime.
She acted like she was getting paid millions of dollars. She was. I went with her one time. I was in the car sleeping. She had the thing cutting the trees down.
The grass.
Man, I'm sleeping. I woke up. Halfway woke up. I see this old lady just cut. I said, nah, bro. I gotta be ashamed of myself. But nah, like that's
she was
dedication.
trimming the bushes.
She was. I'm like
the landscaupers in the back.
I'm like, the guy got paid to do the job, but you're doing the job. So
it's like he missed a spot. Yep. He missed a spot right here.
She was on it. Shout out to Mom Dukes.
Shout out to her. Like even a lot of like the reliable. I know even a lot of the reliable like contractors that I deal with, there like in Connecticut have been people that like I've met through her. So. Yeah. Nevertheless,
definitely a good connection, but
yeah. So in terms of tenants, so that house, she manages the tenants. I come in here and there. The other house that I had before I sold it. So I told you when I first bought it, downstairs the landlord he left, right? So I actually brought in a property manager, and with the property manager, I think I paid him. It was like 10% of revenue. So 10% of rent that was collected was his monthly payment, and essentially like it was a company, so they would do property management stuff, like whenever the tenants had any like issues or questions, or whenever the tenants like my toilet isn't flushing or whatever the case may be, like they would call property management. It was like a 24-hour 24/7 hotline, and then also they would show properties and stuff. So with them, I think I did the first floor, I did a full turnover renovation. Like we, cleaned everything out, repainted everything. A lot of it was very cosmetic things. Yeah. There were some that like we needed to kind of redo some vanities and things like that, and certain kitchen cabinets and whatnot. But a lot of it was more so like repair rather than like full rehabilitate, like rehab. And so once we finished that, they were able to show it, and like within 2 weeks, put a new tenant in there. Yep. Then upstairs, mind you, I was dealing with the eviction, right? So with the property manager, like they actually had an attorney, and they were well versed, like they've been through evictions. Yeah. So it took a couple months, but we were eventually able to get those people out. And I actually have a clip where the way that those people left the property. Yep. Maybe we're going to drop a clip of that here, right in the middle or something, because they left it crazy.
Yeah, let's go. I was just envisioning the whole...
It was crazy. They literally even left their live, like, cats. They left everything. Like, they spray painted the walls, the floors, everything. It was crazy. So for that one, by that time, I was kind of like... So we had some heating issues, because it's an old house, right? So we had some heating issues with the furnace, things like that. And by that time, like I was getting tired of relying solely on property management for expenses, because I felt like every single time they were sending people to do their own expenses, like fixing things or even just looking at something or an emergency visit or that, it's like, oh, $250, this is $300, like just super expensive.
Yeah.
And my mom, like I said, had like connections with some of these other like more handymen and stuff that specialize in different things. So we were like, you know what, we're gonna just bring in our own like contractors and stuff to be able to like address like tenant issues. So that was the part that was like super annoying and stressful because with the property management, it's supposed to be completely hands off.
Yeah.
But to me, I felt like if it was completely hands off, every single month, so much of my rent will be deducted by like extremely overpriced expenses. And like, I don't know if they were actually like calling around to get quotes, like unless I like sometimes I would tell them and I would say like, send me all the different quotes so that I know that you called around.
Yeah.
And so because of that, like I just was very like,
you gotta be careful.
Yeah. And granted, I was far, like they were good in like from when I would ask questions and I wasn't familiar with certain things, and then they were pretty like well versed in things, and then like worst case scenario emergency, they can have someone out there. But on like a regular operational, like I think that I started getting way too involved. And then the second, so upstairs, eventually, there were some things, you know, repair related things that needed to happen in the winter and stuff, which we can get to another time. But the new tenant upstairs then moved in the spring, and it was like night and day compared to the other tenants. The first tenant that was downstairs, I don't even like, he probably didn't even know my name. Dude, literally, like I never spoke to him on the phone.
Yeah.
Never. I didn't even have his contact information. He never put, like, he was just, he went, like, lived in a property, went to work. Like he didn't make any issues, right?
So it was calm. Yeah.
Second person that was down there, same thing, calm. Mind you, the two people that the two couples and their kids that were upstairs that were not paying rent, right, that were delinquent, also never heard anything from them. Right. So the lady downstairs, she would do certain maintenance requests here and there, like in the winter, if like, oh, something like my heater degree like isn't changing as you know as I need it to be or whatever, we'd have people fix it and stuff. Or like, oh, this outlet is kind of like out, minor things. This new like couple that came in the spring, they were like there wouldn't be a week without a complaint about something. First of all, before they even moved into the property, there was like a list of like 20, 25, 20, like 30 not complaints, but like repair requests. And I asked the property manager, like, did you walk them through the property? Like, why? They didn't even move in yet. What's going on, right? And I guess there was a miscommunication where they had originally told it to the property manager or someone in the, like the leasing person, I guess, under the property management. They had originally told them some things during the walkthrough, and that person was like, oh yeah, it'll be addressed. But that person never communicated to anyone else. So then they showed up and they're like, oh, how come all of the, but when I say like excessively, for example, the tenants that were evicted left their abandoned car in the backyard. Yeah,
I remember that.
We called the police and I was like, I don't know what to do with this. The police was like, well, it's not reported stolen. It's just they left it and it's deemed abandoned. So now it's kind of like do whatever. But the thing with that is like I was trying to call a lot of like towing companies and a lot of them would say, well, we need the papers in order. But I'm like, I don't have the papers. It's not my car. I don't have the title.
So you can't do nothing.
So it's almost like you have to kind of like go through this whole process to request title and this and that. And I was like, I just need this to be moved. So it was taking some time for it to move it. These new tenants, even before moving it, oh, well, can this car be moved out of, mind you, the car is in the backyard. We can easily say tenants have no access to the yard, park on the street.
Correct.
We have the right to say, like, park, number one, they weren't allowed to use the garage, right? But they would be using the garage and complaining about, oh, there's certain things in the garage. Like, you're not allowed to be there anyways. Number two.
It's off limits.
Right. It's off limits. Like, we could have easily said only street parking, right? However, the backyard is huge. So, in no way, shape, or form, and the lady that was there had no issues. In no way, shape, or form does this car bother you. Meanwhile, we're trying to figure out a solution to get rid of it. So he was just like, oh, this car, like, I don't like looking out my window and seeing the car. The car was there before you moved in.
So are you talking about the mechanic foot?
What?
The mechanic foot, like the bottom of her foot was black.
Stop it.
That's the one we're talking about, right?
Yeah, her husband.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, like it was very like just complaining about the like, oh, and then months later, so when is this car going to be moved? Like,
when you gonna shower?
We are working on it. And like it wasn't even at that point, like that's something property management had been tasked with. So they're working on it, right?
Correct.
And so it was one, or like, my light bulb like fixture is loose, like, or the
the mail.
Oh, my mailbox. Like there were 3 mailboxes on the property. And the property management, like my main point of contact was like, I don't understand. There's mailboxes there. How come they're not? And they're like, oh no, this one is, I don't know. Like they didn't like the mailboxes that were there. And so they were crazy. Like, we need a new mailbox. This is literally first week of moving in.
Yeah.
So that was just a very, very hands-on. And usually because of like the prior experience that I said, I started becoming more like, engage and stuff with tenants. And similar with this, I'm like, oh, welcome, blah, blah, blah. Cause I want to make people feel comfortable. At that point, I realized like they would literally text me in the middle of the night about, so when is this car getting moved again? Or like, they're way too, like there's fruit flies around. Like, what am I supposed to do with your fruit flies? That's an issue in your house.
Yeah.
Like, there's no fruit flies downstairs. There were no fruit flies before that. How is it now that there's fruit flies? Because look at how you're living.
I need an extra pillow. This ain't no hotel.
Right. Or like in the summertime, like, there's flies. Mm. I lived at that point. I lived in the city, and like we're at like the 36th floor skyscraper. Yeah. And we still got flies. I wasn't calling my building and saying, "Hey, I got flies. I got one fly."
For like a whole week, remember?
And I was like, "How the heck did this fly even get up here?"
That fly, I was chasing that fly for a minute. So yeah,
like it's the summertime, so just little things like that. I had to remove myself. It didn't
make any sense.
I let property management like do what they needed to do at that point, because and that's the advice that I would give. Like really gauge like. Depending on the tenants, some will take advantage of you and really try to pressure you.
And you can't really, honestly, the thing with tenants, like it's not like you can see somebody and say, okay, yeah, like he's gonna be like no issue with this person. You can't tell.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
The one thing though, literally the week they were moving in and then they were giving all these different requests, I asked my property management, I'm like, if he's not happy with the property, suggest that you give his deposit back and he leaves.
That's true.
And the property manager literally asked him, like, would you rather we give your deposit? And he's like, no, it's fine. Da da da. It's like we really, really like the place and this and that. We want to say it.
I remember that.
You remember?
Yeah.
And then towards it just continued to get crazier and crazier. Because at one point he had lost his job and like was trying to kind of like create problems and things like that.
Trying to find a way. That's crazy.
Try to find anything in a way for him to not pay rent. And then even when the seller was like kind of like touring and stuff, he like waited until like the seller's agent was like. He literally waited until everyone was gone and the seller was like getting ready to go. I mean, not the seller, the buyer, I should say, who bought it from me. And then he like went down, like rushed downstairs when everyone else was gone, her agent and my agent, everyone. And apparently he was telling her like, oh, the rent needs to be lower. Like, so when you buy it, like you need to make the rent lower. There's all these this and that. Like, and it almost startled her. And
that could have stopped the whole transaction.
It could. There. Like, you can't, first of all, we have a lease agreement. And mind you, we their rent was based on a 2-bedroom because the 3rd bedroom they were not permitted to have access. When they moved in, they begged us. They were like, we're just going to use this as storage. Can we have access to this additional space? We said, all right, you know what? Fine. Sure. So they had literally 3 full bedrooms and were paying the amount that they were paying.
Yeah.
So either way, like, and if you're assuming, and it was a year lease, she was assuming the lease that was in place, which the lease has this rent. You cannot tell her, or try to intimidate her or anyone that like, oh, the rent needs to be less. No, the lease is this amount and that's what it's going to be. At the lease expiration date, you can either stay at the new rate that I'm gonna decide, or you can leave.
Hasta la vista.
You know.
But yeah, so now that's crazy. Like the tenants. Yeah. So like real estate is like, it can be fun. It can also be stressful.
Oh yeah.
Just like anything in life. Like just like you know, you go to work sometimes. You know, you might have a good day at work, and then you know the following day can be terrible. So it's just ups and downs. But I also wanted to like, you know, because we're gonna kind of close it out a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, not a little bit. Close it out. Right. And this whole conversation was like interesting and very important, right? For us to have. The thing about it, like. We're gonna do this. We're gonna eventually talk about this in another episode, real estate and culture, right? Because you mentioned a lot of stuff on this episode. You broke down the numbers. You went into, you know, deep, not too deep, but kind of deep into real estate, the ins and out, and all of that. How to get your first property, or what happened, all of that, your experience basically. So this is not like in our culture, like we typically don't hear these type of stories, right? Like getting in culture, we don't really, like here in America, I don't know like a lot of getting that's into real estate. The only one I would say I know for sure was Almami, my cousin. Like he got a company called named Brick. Like this man used to go around putting his sign on people private property and all of that, and they'll remove it. It was everywhere you go, you saw Brick. He was the only guy that I saw was really out there just like doing, you know, into real estate, right? So shout out to Almami, you feel me? Because, you know, we've been talking. So like it's very important that this episode is like, we put this episode out, and hopefully it impact, some of our people, out there that's also try to like find their way. And I feel like real estate is a way to it's a good way to go. It's a good way for like young Guineans to start doing. If you got brothers, if it's 4 of y'all, 5 of y'all, 3 of y'all, start saving money at age 18, 20, start saving. So at least by like, I would say late 20s or early 30s, you're ready to invest, or you already been investing, or you kind of like familiar with the industry. So you can kind of go into that and then, try to, own something, So this is very important because it changed my whole mindset when we started talking, and you started talking about real estate. And, I didn't understand it at first, but, it kind of makes sense now. Like, why do you want to just not own anything? Why you just want to be living in an apartment or just living in your house, let's say, and this is another way where you can make money. It can be passive income. And then eventually if you get enough property and enough doors, then it can be like, a full blown whatever you want to call it. Yep. So this message is very important, and I'm glad I appreciate all the breakdowns and everything that you've been teaching people and me also, because I've learned a lot. Like, it's crazy. I've learned so much within a span of like 6 months, if that. Like, I mean, obviously I was with you during the journey, but I'm talking about like you would tell me, yo, the roofing, should I do that? I was like, yeah, like I'll help you with opinion, but I was like, I don't know what's going into it, right? Just like, what you think, which one is a better option? I was like, okay, would this help? Is this like it'll be situation. We look at both situations and we'll be like, okay, I think this is the best option, and then she just go ahead and do it. My job is done, right? So so real estate and culture would be the next step that we're gonna take. We're gonna really talk about real estate, and we're gonna really try to mix it with our culture, so we can get some of us getting people to own some blocks in New York, Michigan, Indiana, honestly, Ohio, wherever.
Some of these people, it's crazy when you think that like a lot of like the generation before that came, especially in New York and stuff, and like like went into apartments and then like were paying rent and like are still paying rent, right? And like, and honestly, like you don't know what you don't know,
exactly,
which is
or the risk,
the risk, right?
Yeah.
So super unfortunate aspect of it. You don't know what you don't know, and then the risk aspect of it. But then like imagine like what some of these could have cost, the amount of money that went into rent for 20, 30, however many years, 40 years, 50 years. I don't know about 50, but maybe some of them may have been here for 50 years.
But even if it's not for you, like you got your kids, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, life is a sacrifice, bro. Your parents do it for you do it for your kids do it for them.
It's just, it's unfortunate. Like, even this, like I said, had it not been for the senior managers and mentors that I had, when I was working. Like, and the fact that like I was like, you know what, I'm open to any industry. Yeah. I would have gone into another industry because it sounds nice.
No, that's true.
Oh, it sounds nice to be an auditor at this media and entertainment company.
Yeah.
You know, whereas like I was like, you know what, I'm open to it, and God directed somehow things. It's crazy, like things work out the way that they worked out, and I ended up in this industry from a different lens. And really, really becoming passionate about it. And I was like, you know what? This is something that I want to pursue, like personally as well, and with my family.
You know.
Shout out to those senior managers, shout out man.
To them. Yeah. So yeah, just like you say, like 20, 30 years, you know, people just paying money on rent. We actually did one for my uncle back home. Me and his, you know, sons, we sat down, we did a whole math. The neighborhood that we all grew up in, they've been staying there for like 14 years, and then we calculate the amount of money that he spent. We actually went a little below what they were paying just to make sure, you know, we kind of like around, you know, number is not extremely off or whatever. So it was like $190K for the last, I think, 12 years. I'm like, you know, obviously rent in Michigan and rent in New York is not the same. The price of a house in Michigan and New York is not the same. But with that money, they probably would have owned. The house would probably been paid off, and they probably would have been, you know, up to buy another property, ready to buy another property. So my whole thing is, like you mentioned New York, I think like on Clubhouse we always talk about it. Tilly and the other like auntie, they always mention building pita or something like that. I'm not sure where it's located, but they mentioned that like some of our parents, like again, you say education is very important, and Kamina always mentioned like information is key, right? If you don't know, you don't know. If nobody gives you the information, you don't know what to do. Right? So like, you know, he said that building pita is full of like Fulani people, and you know, by now that could have been owned by them, you know, or whatever, you know, that could have been a Guinean building that's owned by Guinean people, you know. So like, and one thing I want to pinpoint, because this is Unveil, this is what we're going to unveil and close it out, and this is an Unveil moment. It's for Guinean people out there, and the most successful immigrants as far as Africans are the Nigerians. Right, so I feel like we need to
and that in itself could be another topic, because I know there are some people that, like, you know,
nobody's touching the Nigerians.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm saying there's some people that like would challenge it because of their own reasons. So I'm saying it'd be interesting to bring different thoughts and different perspectives, and talk about that as a separate topic.
And you know, the Nigerians are, you know, they're killing it, right?
They sure are.
Some people, they mention like, okay, it's more of them, so therefore, listen, at the end of the day, they're killing it, right? And you know, give them their props. Like, you know, if they killing it, they're killing it. They just kind of, whatever method they're using, we can kind of like copy the same method or learn from it and do whatever. So the whole point here is Guineans, people from Guinea, we need to like be financially literate, right? We need to come together and understand that we can build something, you know, especially the kids that were born here, and also the ones that kind of came over here like us and were kind of like, you know, raised here, right? So we need to come together and start, you know, the reason why we came here, to go to school, to learn, to gain some type of knowledge and information and build. Let's do that. That's the whole point of this real estate and culture. And Numso is, you know, a prime example of that, you know?
Yeah. So, and build in whatever is your passion, right?
Correct.
Like, you know, in my lane it may be real estate, in someone else's lane it may be something else. Like it may be like a hair braiding business, right? Make your franchise. I don't know, I've never heard of a hair braiding franchise. However, like, you know, like there's definitely other like hair salons that I've heard of that are franchises, you know? So, or whatever the case may be, restaurant, right? Whatever the case may be. For sure. And knowledge, to your point, like
we got so many
learning. Like for the most part, on a daily basis, I'm like consistently like listening, whether it's on my commute back to or from work or something. I'm always listening to like different podcasts or you know, ebooks, or like right now we have our March book that we're reading. And so just trying to learn as much as I can, because there have been people that have done a wide range of things, and like you'll hear me upstairs randomly, I'm like, what? Learning something new that I didn't know before.
Correct.
Right? So like the end of school does not mean the end of learning.
So it's always good to listen to like either like podcasts that give you like knowledgeable information and try to motivate you and try like things that you can learn from.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
And even courses.
Yeah, courses
like
too.
We look out for free courses in the industries that we're interested in.
For sure. And, you know, and, you know, we always like, because this podcast, the Unveiled Mindset, we get into all type of topics. We get into different layers. This is like the maze runner, right?
Yeah.
So, like, because she mentioned about like every morning when I learned this from, I saw her do it first. She wake up and start listening to this motivational. No, actually, I saw mommy do it, but that was more towards like geared towards sports. Okay. So he used to listen to E.T.
Okay.
First time he E.T. was mom.
I used to listen to E.T. too.
Yeah. So he used to.
Sometimes I still.
He used to do because you know, mom. Sorry to put your business on. Mom used to be fat. Like I'm talking about bulbul, right? And then I don't know what happened, but something happened. He changed. Bro, mom used to. He played 3 sports. He wrestled, played soccer, and played football, and he ran track. 4. He did all of that. And mom, he used to do this fasting. He used to fast.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And then he used to listen to E.T. all the time. I'm like, what? He said, successful people don't sleep. Something like that. Yep. It was something like, they don't sleep. Why you sleeping? They up. Like I used to hear. I'm like, yo, what is he listening to? Yep. So he was the first one. And then like in the morning, her stuff is not geared towards sports. Because mom used to be running, you know what I'm saying, listening or whatever. Her stuff is like, she's simply going to work, right? And then I'm like, what? I'm like, what the hell she listen? Like, what is wrong with this? She listened to the Bible or the Quran? What is this? And then like every morning she listened to it. Where on the other hand, some people wake up in the morning, the first thing to listen to is rap music, right? It's like, so the reason why I mentioned that, because right now the person I listen to is
Jim Rome.
Jim Rome. Oh my God, Jim Rome is a poet, bro. So he can be one of the greatest rapper the way he talk, right? So, and I was like, yo, we talk about like, you know, listening to like motivational like, you know, things in the morning or videos and things like that, right? Because you know, your conscious and your subconscious, you know how it works. Once you go to sleep, everything that you've been listening to, when you go to sleep, when you're no longer there, you just sleep. Your subconscious already recorded everything you listen to during the day. So that get registered in your head.
Yeah.
So you wonder why you like certain things. You wonder why you don't like certain things. Your mind is already programmed to like whatever you've been listening to all day. If you listen to, I listen to those music too, but I have a balance, you know?
Yeah.
I make sure I don't consume too much of this and consume more of this, right?
Yeah. Especially first thing in the morning.
Exactly, right? Because
I heard your brain is more like susceptible to things in like the first 20-30 minutes or so when you wake up.
So, and you know, just to mention that, so that's
we wake up, real estate. Go to sleep.
You feel me? Real estate with Nunso Kaba, and then we got real estate and culture. And stay tuned, we got way more coming.
Yeah, and let us know if y'all have other questions, comments down below. Listen, we are going through a journey.
That's gonna be crazy.
We are going to continuously document our journey. We're gonna continue to have like sit downs and stuff at major milestones and go through it and whatnot. In the meantime, like make sure we're gonna drop like our vlogs and stuff like whenever we're going to. Like, we did a property tour, for example. So
crazy. We went to a haunted house. I'm just joking.
it looks like it, but we'll drop some videos and stuff like that. I think it'll be interesting. Like I also want like a year, 2 years, 3 years, however many years from now, to kind of look back at progress,
the
right?
Journey,
and the journey, because I might look back at something and I'm like, girl, you did not have to do all of that. You could have just done this because of something that I learned later.
And errors, you know what I'm saying?
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So thank you guys for listening and tuning in.
Yep, and we're gonna wrap it up with
wrap it up.
Unveiled Mindset. Stay tuned. Y'all know what it is. We out.
Bye.
Peace.